Speaking of precipitation, I do want to also acknowledge the historic storm events that took place this last winter that illustrated our nation's vulnerability to heavy precipitation and flooding when we get what little rain that we do get too much too quickly. Atmospheric river rainstorms are responsible for nearly 85% of flooding on the West Coast, which threatened our vital infrastructure and vulnerable communities. In California specifically, we had 9 successive atmospheric rivers in January, which caused flooding, power outages, and mudslides, resulting in an estimated $4.6 billion worth of damages. I lay that out because it's important to get the data to better understand what we're grappling with here so we can inform how we adapt and how we respond. So I was actually glad to see the president's supplemental request funding for NOAA's acquisition of 2 Hurricane Hunter aircraft replacements, which is something that both Senator Graham and I, both members of the committee, pushed hard on. These planes can help provide real-time data from inside atmospheric rivers to increase vital decision-making, which is important to protect life and property. Dr. Wehner, back to you. In your testimony, you mentioned that climate attribution research in heat waves and hurricanes is more advanced. Can you talk more about the need for research and development around atmospheric river events?
Well, indeed, the literature on hurricanes is long and detailed, although we don't know everything, obviously, about hurricanes. Atmospheric rivers weren't even named such until about 20 years ago. And so it's a much younger field of research, and there's much more to be done. And in fact, what you mentioned about sending airplanes out into these storms has only just begun, but that's really critical to get that kind of data so we understand why some of these disturbing findings that we've found about atmospheric rivers, particularly the ones that are associated with the so-called bomb cyclones, have such a sensitive response, a large response in their precipitation amounts from climate change.
So, thank you. And I know my time is up. I'll just end with this. Having been briefed post these atmospheric river events earlier this year, a lot of the impact on the ground to communities, particularly vulnerable communities, were a result of the atmospheric river storms not behaving as they were initially predicted. Again, because of the lack of research historically when it comes to atmospheric rivers. So the quicker and better we can understand how they're more likely to behave, whether they just stay stationary over a certain geographic area or move further north, south, east, west, depending on greater climate factors, the more we can prepare to protect life and property on the ground. So appreciate all your research and testimony here today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.